All right, hey everyone. Thank you all for being here and for joining us for lunch. A basis of the conversation today is really going to be around CTV measurement and a piece of research that ADWEEK conducted in conjunction with Mountain. And I want to emphasize conversation. Like, I don't want to, ideally, it's not just going to be the two of us sitting up here talking while you all eat. I would like to actually involve you guys in the conversation, whether that means us kind of coming down and calling on you, or if we say something, you guys disagree with it or agree with it emphatically. I just really want to encourage you to just speak up, to shout it out. Mike will provide the answer.
Try to.
All right, and it looks like you guys have already filled out the survey. But before we kind of like start addressing the results here, Mike, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, about Mountain, and what you do for Mountain?
Sure. Well, thank you all for joining us. We're excited to have you here. My name is Mike Scalise, Senior Director, Customer Success at Mountain. So I've been at Mountain going on 7 years, so just a couple of years now. And me and my team work with a lot of different advertisers and brands and marketers like your guys' selves. We work with them to deploy CTV strategy across all their campaigns and their businesses. We are constantly working with marketers, trying to figure out ways in which they can validate the data that they're seeing on CTV, increase their reach across different audiences, bring in new-to-file users to the funnel. So that's really our bread and butter, what I do day in and day out, is talking to all different types of marketers like your guys' selves. We range from having small business all the way up to huge enterprise level customers, so people that are spending multiple millions of dollars a month. But our true bread and butter are advertisers spending much less than that, right? So what we've been able to do is our self-serve product allows marketers to tap into TV for the very first time. And so 90% of the customers we work with have never been on TV, and it's a really fun and exciting time to work with them. And I can't tell you how many times we see brands say like, oh, sitting on the sofa, and like we saw our brand come up on TV. We never thought we'd be on TV before, and it's really exciting. So excited to share more with you today and dive into the research and the poll.
I'm just curious here, does everyone here advertise on CTV regularly, or are you guys thinking about it? What's the general vibe? Yeah.
Good.
Okay, everyone's an old hand at it.
Thinking about it. I love that. That means hopefully we could sway you then today.
Just what are your considerations? Like, why not?
We just...
Got it. All right, so I actually kind of want to talk a little bit about the survey we just did. Mike, anything surprising here?
No, honestly, these are tried and true myths and fears and hurdles that we hear every single day from customers, whether they're thinking about CTV and they've gathered up enough test budget to test it, or they've been live for many months and they're on their third, fourth, fifth different partner trying to understand the impact that it has for their brand. But when you think of measurement, measurement's key. Honestly, it's key for no matter what type of advertising you're doing, having that ability and that factor to actually prove with data that the campaigns are working, that they're creating an impact, that it's incremental, and that every dollar that you're spending, CMOs, C-levels, boards are all going to be like, great, yep, you can spend as much as you want here. The one thing that I thought was interesting is the reach factor here, which I think in some of the content that we cover, we'll touch on audience reach and what that actually means from a measurement perspective, but all your guys' heads are in the right places, which is awesome.
Wait, what surprised you? Why did reach surprise you so much?
Because I think there's still this kind of myth that TV is very obviously like branding focus, and that CTV itself, you can't find the right audience that you would want to reach on that, and it's not comparable for a brand to maybe serve ads on that because they have either brand consideration or limitations that they have or safety that they're running into. Like, traditionally, when people first started thinking about CTV, they thought of like, there was literally an app on like Samsung back in the day that was like cat TV that you could watch literally cats on, and people had this connotation that that's what CTV was. But we've come a long way from I think that was like 2015 timeframes, and it's primetime television on there. You can stream the Super Bowl on CTV, and so, yeah, I think that's why.
Well, don't knock the cat videos. I will say the IFC, they have a whole section
They
of
do.
cat videos in the theater.
They got a lot of different content.
Actually, so this actually kind of brings us to the research,
Sure.
because when we were looking at the results, what do you use CTV for? It was almost always all branding or mostly branding.
Yeah, I think if you actually go to our content, we could probably jump into that slide and share it. Now I'm in control. This is scary.
Do you have the power?
I do have the power.
All right.
Cool. So this was kind of the results from the research that ADWEEK did with Mountain, and as you could see here, are your connected TV campaigns focused more on brand marketing or performance marketing? And the 35% is exclusively brand marketing, and it goes down to the 3% being only performance driven. So you could see that majority of people believe CTV to be a branding play, right? There's not that much performance that this channel can drive for the brand. What Mountain's been able to do is really kind of change that and actually be able to drive performance in CTV. So
just to clarify, so 35% obviously exclusively branding, 32%
Sure.
is mostly branding.
Mostly branding.
And then 20% is
split.
branding and performance. 10% is mostly performance, and 3% is exclusively performance.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just to let you know, because the labels aren't there.
Yes. Didn't make it over.
Yeah, I just, so I mean, you all kind of work with CTV advertising, and I'm just kind of curious, like what's your verdict? Does this resonate with you? Is this sort of like, yeah, that aligns with how we think about it?
Seeing the head nods, good.
Yeah.
Cool. So yeah, as I mentioned, CTV really is a performance channel. It's how Mountain actually views this channel. We are always focused on driving an outcome for an advertiser. So more than just serving a TV commercial in the home, we really want to focus on driving that outcome or driving that website visit, making sure that that user that your ad's in front of is taking action. You'll see here some of the stats that we provided that just in May this past year, there was a record-breaking 38.8% share of total TV usage came from streaming devices, right? And so since the COVID ages, we've seen that just kind of skyrocket, and it's continuing to skyrocket, that more and more and more households are cutting the cord, they're watching TV, and it's no longer the minority. It is becoming the vast majority of households are using streaming devices to watch and consume content.
I mean, so like within this context, what does performance mean exactly?
Good question. So again, to us at Mountain, what we are focused on from a performance standpoint is driving an outcome. So when an advertiser comes to us and they want to drive, whether that be a return on ad spend goal, a cost per visit goal, whatever that means, it's ensuring that these campaigns are doing just that, and they are reaching the right audience that is most likely to convert, that is most likely to be impacted by your brand messaging and take action and not just see your ad, but also then consume the product that you're offering as well.
So, and by action, you mean
Converting.
Cite, convert, less and go to the
Depends on the goal of the campaign, but it would be conversion, obviously, right? Money talks. We want to see those dollars come in.
Yeah. So I mean, most of the people here, like you guys all kind of nodded when we said, yeah, it's mostly branding. Why is that? Like, what has been like the hesitation investing like performance dollars into CTV? Like, do you trust the performance? Or is it just branding has just been like where you guys kind of came from and it's what you know? Just why?
So without the key performance indicators, it's difficult to validate that as beyond a brand effort. And that's the traditional thing that's difficult with any of these media channels.
100%. So traditionally, like linear TV, of course.
Christian raised his hand.
Oh.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that, we've started to use the word brandformance. Sure, you've heard the term used. But in connected TV on the television screen, I think we just naturally associate brand, commercial, not being able to get super granular with audiences. But now that we do have that ability, the content can change as well. So, not necessarily creating a commercial style video that goes into connected TV, but like such a social media piece that could go into connected TV that doesn't look like a commercial. But I think that the data that you just showed us using connected TV for brand, and then for performance, I think everything should be performance. Like at the end of the day, we want to sell our products and services, and the ability for us to see something and then quickly access our phone, like why not use it as a performance channel?
Absolutely. Any other? I have some, oh, go ahead.
I know, I'd say the
I
other
like this
thing
table.
with that is when we're looking at performance budgets is where does the next dollar go in terms of a channel. And so when we're comparing like KPIs for CTV versus other performance channels like search or like retargeting display or like some of these other areas, it's really hard for them to compete. They just look a lot higher typically. Be curious if you see anything different, but it's where does that next dollar go when it's performance versus brand.
Clarifying question for you. When you say a lot higher, are you meaning that in a way that the value that the TV channel is driving is a lot higher than something like search?
Potentially, like if we're looking at a CPA, like a CPA being higher, which is typically worse.
Correct. So thank you for the clarification. A couple things with TV, right? Just the format itself, where the ads are being served, is going to be a little bit more costly of a channel. This is the large screen. One would argue the TV unit is probably the most impactful unit in the household. And the reason being is to kind of that point you were making earlier, the way you interact with the TV ad is very different. There's a couple big branding campaigns out there that I think were driven as a girl dad of 2 little girls. There's a Always campaign that talked about just like a girl, right? And it was this interview with little girls versus older individuals or males as well, talking what does it mean to run like a girl or throw a ball like a girl. And you can't drive that impact from a printed ad as well. Sure, you could do it. There's definitely brands that have done it well. Also on a social campaign, when you're scrolling in content and constantly being consumed by different content that fast, it's hard sometimes for our brains to emotionally connect. And on a TV, you have about 30 seconds or so to really evoke emotion with the user. And then when you match that user with your brand and your product that you want to get in front of, you are that much more able to see the performance out of it or the higher return out of a TV commercial or TV campaign than you would something like search or social. Now, because of that though, the cost is just a little bit higher to serve, right? You have a little bit higher CPMs, but what we've been able to do is in the marketplace is really drive down costs where they are a lot more comparable. Because we work with so many different advertisers, networks love us because we're bringing users that are not in market to market. So we're not taking pieces of the pie and just shuffling it around. We're actually growing the TV market. So that's a value that we bring. And then in return, we just bring that back to our customer base to drive costs down, which has been a big success for Mountain over the past few years. But you're absolutely right. You should expect to see the costs of a TV commercial to be a little bit more just because of the content and where it is and the inventory that you are serving on.
I have a question for you.
Sure.
So we're considering investing in connected TV, and we provide a B2B service to executives. So on the surface, it seems like a good opportunity. But when I'm thinking a little bit more deeply about it, okay, you have live television, that makes sense. But outside of live television, one of the benefits of these platforms is your ability to upgrade so you can block the ads. And I'm just thinking, how should we approach this given that we're going after executives? I remember when I signed up for Hulu for my kids, I made it 30 minutes. I was like, oh my God, I can't do this. I'm upgrading right away. So how should I be thinking about that in terms of reaching that particular audience via connected TV outside of live television?
Yeah, good question. So a couple things. One, we practice what we preach. We run TV ads using our own platform and our own product. I could embarrass Alana in the room. She's with Mountain, but she's our CSM on the account and runs that account just like any other of our customers. And we are going after executives that would use Mountain for their business and also run campaigns kind of similar to what you're talking about. And traditionally, right, when we first started CTV, I don't know, many years ago now, that concept was more true. But now what we're seeing is like the fast channel viewership, which is free ad-supported content, is continuing to grow. You have things like Netflix joining and Disney Plus joining the content or into the market with ad-supported content. So yes, there's those individuals that pay the premium for the non-ads, but they're still consuming live events that have ads. So like now that football season's back, and if they're streaming a game, there's ability to reach those users there. So no matter what you're doing, ads are not going to be completely gone. It makes it a little bit more targeted and harder. So our recommendation would be you got to go a little bit more narrow with your targeting to ensure that every dollar that you're spending is to the right person that you would want to see your ad. And so it's a balance, right? It's a mix. We give you the capabilities and platform to see all the data, to make these decisions, to understand exactly how that would benefit your brand and your business. And ultimately, it's really about testing and understanding what you're learning and how you can continue to narrow the targeting so it does make an impact on your brand. Good question.
All right, so we were kind of, one of the topics that came up was that, branding is, there's a performance component to
Sure.
that as well, even though we kind of separated it in the survey. Like, how should we think about like going from branding and then kind of narrowing that target down into someone who's actually going to buy, and then making sure that person buys?
Absolutely. Well, branding is all about filling the funnel, right? It's driving that awareness of your brand in the marketplace and making sure that consumers are out there knowing who you are, what you do, what you sell, and getting that value out there. So arguably, wow, I can't speak. CTV gives you that opportunity because it's a big and long ad format of 30 seconds that allows you to convey that message, to evoke that emotion, to get your brand in front of the right user. You got to start there to fill the funnel. Then from there, what you want to do is be able to not only run CTV campaigns, but one of the big things that we talk about as a team at Mountain is we don't really care just about what you're doing on CTV. We need to understand what you're doing across your whole mix and ensure that all of it makes sense. It all has to connect. It all has to make complementary decisions of what you're doing at top of funnel, what you do mid funnel, what you do down funnel, because at the end of the day, we're here to make those dollars and cents. And so we need to ensure that these campaigns are set up to do just that. And so with TV, you have the ability not only to run prospecting initiatives by driving new to file, but go mid funnel maybe to a CRM campaign where you can upload your information and target those customers. Maybe it's a loyalist, maybe it's past converters, all the way down to retargeting. So targeting users that have been to your site from whatever channel and tactics that you've been driving them to, and serve them TV commercials to hopefully get down to the point of conversion.
Wait, what does campaign ellipsis mean?
Yeah. So this question says, which of the following areas related to CTV is most challenging to you and your organization? It's campaign measurement. The measurement there I think is key, but as the word bubble kind of showed earlier too, that measurement piece is really critical, and Mountain created its own attribution model to help solve for some of those measurement challenges in the marketplace.
Why is that so hard?
Because you can't click on a TV, right? So all of the devices that you have on the table or in your pockets, you can visit a brand and you can be tracked on it and you can directly purchase from that. But when you're consuming content on TV, you can't. You have to pull up a secondary device to do so. What happens is a lot of times you lose that connectability and that ability to measure the impact of what happens there. And so we needed to come up with a solution that does just that, being able to track when a user in that IP address or that household sees a TV commercial, and then on any other device in the household visits, makes a conversion, and it so forth from there.
Got it.
I think, sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to ask.
Go ahead.
If that kind of resonated with everyone here also, like when they think about measuring their CTV, is it campaign measurement? Is it campaign optimization that is really kind of the sticking point, or, are we off base on the survey?
I think you're right. It is the measurement and the ability. Thank you. It's the measurement and the ability to attribute it to a single channel when you actually have a whole mix. So there's a lot of education to be done. I was also intrigued by the fact that you can upload your CRM data into targeting. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Absolutely. So within our platform, we have the capability that you can take that CRM data. It's completely compliant. We don't see any of the data. It just uploads, and then it's scrubbed to match households. And so we can then serve, either it's typically a lot of brands use it to block. So if they want to block that data so that they only are focused on new to file, but brands that want to run solely CRM focused campaigns that have enough data, Because this is TV and because there is a lot of reach that's impacted there, we need to have a few 100,000 email addresses in that upload, but we can run specific campaigns and you can target that messaging a little bit differently. And what we see a lot of advertisers do specifically around the holidays is special offers or loyalties, or we even look at it as like a win-back program. Maybe they've purchased in the last, haven't purchased in the last 6 months, but have purchased before. Sometimes brands look at that as a re-engagement tactic to bring them back in, and they call it more upper funnel or mid-funnel tactics. But it's a really strong capability of a platform like Mountain that we have to diversify your targeting and what you're looking to do. Of course.
The CRM matching feels, oh, sorry, did you have your hand? You were just resting, all right? Do you want to ask a question though, since you have? Okay.
No pressure, no pressure.
No, he's not ready yet. He will later. So, I mean, CRM matching, that feels like sort of like a very traditional, like digital tactic. Is it relatively new to the CTV space, and is it different than when you were doing a CRM match?
Well, we've had it in our platform now for a couple years now, the capability, so it's not new to us, but I think the concept is relatively new. One of the things that this slide's talking about is really just how to set up those success stories, and we're all about testing and learning, right? Because we are a performance channel, and something that you mentioned earlier was about like the digital characteristics or qualities of it. That's often what we see in our CTV campaigns have, is a lot of those digital properties where you can see very specific KPIs and measurement. I think that was brought up earlier, like you could see visit rate, conversion rate, of course your ROAS, but really understanding exactly where those users are and how they're funneling into your site and how they're converting and interacting is key, and you have all that capability. But in order to do that, you have to set up a successful test. So any advertiser that comes to us, we really want to ensure that their campaigns are set up to hit their goal, right? To make sure that it's aimed to do what they are intending it to do. Can't win them all. Some tests don't go well, but there's advertisers that are learning something from that because they have the data available to them, and they might have a assumption about how CTV would work because they're also running search or social campaigns, or they ran TV in the past, and they just bring over those expectations. But it's a learning opportunity to learn something new, learn something different, to see how does your brand interact with this audience. And we'll get to it in a little bit, but audience and targeting, something earlier we talked about that I heard in the main sessions was just like AI and data-driven decisions that you need to make. A lot of that comes down to who are you targeting and what the impact is there.
Do you want to take us through the success stories and what you have here?
I'm just trying to see where we're at. Okay, so when we talk about success stories, right, when we really want to bring an advertiser that's new to CTV into Mountain, we really focus on what their goal is, as I've mentioned a couple of times now. What are they looking and aiming to do? From there, typically we see them run a test budget, whatever they're similarly running maybe on search or social before, whether it's an ad product specific or a branding purpose specifically as well, figuring out what that right budget is for that specific brand. And then data is how we're going to be able to measure and understand the value of that campaign and how it's ran. I mentioned this earlier already, and sorry I jumped ahead, but we also use Mountain to understand exactly how our potential consumers are interacting with our brand, and we see over 25% of our website visits are driven by our TV commercials.
Can you kind of like chase them down the funnel as also?
Absolutely. We have campaigns set up through funnel to ensure that whoever we're driving through prospecting, those prospecting campaigns are solely focused on the upper funnel awareness, but then also the retargeting audience that is solely focused on, maybe they've come to site, non-committal yet, want to be able to drive that user more down funnel. And then we also use CRM as well to ensure maybe people that have used us in the past or whatever can come back.
How do you think about the attribution side of things, since that's a problem that, just across the entire ad industry?
Yeah, let's jump ahead to measurement here. So when we talk about measurement, it's really important to be able to have a clear and confident understanding in the data that you have within the platform. Without that effective and reliable data source, it's really hard for marketers like yourself to be able to make those decisions. And so what our CEO, Mark Douglas, did many, many moons ago was he didn't like what was out there, so he wanted to create his own measurement. And that's what we have coined and done with our verified visits model. And so this gives marketers an accurate and a deterministic way to view the unique performance driven by their campaigns. And so Mountain has things like our cross-device identifier. It's unique to us. And we use things like household IPs, device IDs, GA IDs, and other behavioral signals that we use to map and understand the full household of devices to understand, okay, hey, we served a ad into this household, and then we've seen with X amount of time frame that somebody in that household actually went and visited your site and took action. And so what we call that is our verified visit model. And I can run through exactly how it works in 3 easy steps. So first thing is, you're sitting on your sofa, you're streaming TV, I don't know, maybe it's Bravo and you're watching, I don't know, Housewives, maybe you're streaming something on ESPN. I got a laugh out of there. And it's Monday Night Football. I know somebody will be watching it later. And then from there, that user visits your website on any device, right? You can't go to your website from the TV. You have to pull up that secondary device. And so you can define that time frame. On average, our predetermined windows for prospecting are 14 days because it does take a lot of time, typically from what we've seen in data, for a user to actually then take that action and visit the site. Then from there, we can track that user and we open up a standard 30-day conversion window, and we know in our platform, hey, anytime that visitor has converted in 30 days, we'll say, hey, Mountain took credit, but you can also integrate us with things like Google Analytics or other third parties to also view that measurement. We don't have anything to do with conversion on those platforms, just visit data is what we send, but you could see things like Rockerbox, Tableau, whatever your source of truth is, to measure these campaigns just alongside any other campaigns that you're running.
Just curious how people here think about like their CTV measurement capabilities. Like, do you guys trust it? Does it give you enough? What are kind of the pain points that you guys are seeing when it comes to assessing the value of your CTV ads? Or is everything perfect? Oh, no.
We get a little hung up on attribution sometimes.
Okay.
So, you know, you're running CTV, you might be running broadcast also. Mm-hmm. You've got your socials running, you've got your display ads running, and you know, anywhere from 10 to 30% of the leads that come into our ecosystem are duplicated through other channels. And so then you just get into that question of like, well, how do you show that the CTV influenced action through those other channels? So that would be something we struggle a little bit.
Good question. So typically what we are able to see in advertisers that have turned us on or turned on our CTV campaigns, see it twofold. They either see it by their search results increasing or social efforts also increasing, so what we used to call the halo effect, kind of rising tides lift all boats. And some of our skeptic advertisers don't believe us until they turn us off, and 3 months later they knock on the door and like, hey, everything's kind of started to deflate and we don't know why. And so you typically see that from the impact. We are working on trying to find ways within our own platform to provide that level of data and integrate it into our kind of reporting offering, where we can show that a little bit more distinctly in what those impacts look like across. It's a hard and a valuable question that often comes up to us. I think anyone on our team will say the number one thing that people ask us is understanding validation and the true impact of how it not only impacts our campaigns, but what it's doing for the business in a lift format. But what you're saying is a problem that still persists, and I don't know if Mountain has figured out a bulletproof way yet to fully solve for that. All we can say is we see it when we turn the campaigns on, and we have the data to show that all these advertisers see a lift in what that does for their brand across multiple channels. Because to your point, you're reaching your consumers in multiple different outlets, hopefully, right? You're not just running one campaign in one channel, you want to be diverse. And it's that mix that tends to actually drive a little bit more of a positive outcome, because you're not only being seen on social. And the point that I made earlier is on TV, a consumer's interacting a little bit differently when they're sitting on their sofa and they're binge watching a new season of something, or they're consuming TV a little bit differently than when they're on social. And so oftentimes when you see that, they're like, huh, and they might search, or they might wait, or it might just be enough that was planted in their brains and their minds that later down the road when they see it on search or social ads, they're like, wait, I remember that ad, or like, I want to actually now dig into that a little bit more. So I don't know if it gives you the perfect answer that you're hoping for, because there's, you know. It does.
We acknowledge there's some we just acknowledge there's some overlap and try to quantify that and look at the total ROI.
Yes.
And like overall, the whole thing worked. So
Yep, that's the best way to do it right now.
that gets us through.
I would argue in any channel that you're running, there's always going to be a lot of overlap.
So we're kind of coming up to sort of the end of our time. I think there was a case study that you wanted to share with us.
Yeah, we can run through this one really quickly. So Candle Science ignites growth. Pun fully intended there, I guess. You can give a shout out to our marketing team. But what they do is they run ethically, like safe, non-burning candles typically, and they also have some candle options as well. But what they were able to do is come to Mountain in the time of Q4 timeframe. So obviously it's a really popular timeframe for gift giving season. And they were able to turn their upper funnel branding campaign and really understand and see the performance that that campaign was able to drive for their brand. As I mentioned, it was during a very critical time for them. And since CTV is such a powerful channel, they saw all of those effects hit their lower funnel tactics with a huge increase on, of course, ROAS. Like I said, Q4 timeframe, there was that really opportune time to test. They saw a decrease in cost per visits quarter over quarter. And of course, same with that comment came up earlier about CPAs, a decrease in that as well when they turned on the Mountain campaigns.
Non-burning candles sound great. Every time I light my wife's decorative candles, I get a talking to.
Yeah, my wife used to love candles, so we had children, and now they all have to be fragrant-free. I don't know, like whatever.
Well, moving back, conversation back to CTV, any
Sure.
final thoughts or suggestions on the future of CTV and, you know, in getting advertisers to kind of invest more in the performance side?
Yeah, I think there's two main things that make Mountain a little bit different when we talk about CTV. Not only do we have the performance side and all the reporting, and you can get probably too much data on our platform, but there's two key things that we believe make TV a little bit different than any other CTV provider. One is creative. We've heard a lot about kind of the value that creative has, what your brand needs to look and feel like when it comes to TV. Saw some great examples earlier today in some of the content that was shared. But making sure that your creative is reaching the right audience and it makes the right, or it allows for the right message to be conveyed to that specific audience is important. So we acquired a couple creative agencies over the last few years because we want to be able to give our advertisers opportunities to produce creative. One of the biggest hurdles that we found in the past was that a lot of advertisers didn't have the budget to produce creative, so they just pulled anything off the shelf, and that's not the smartest way to go after a specific audience. You want to be able to message them specifically. And then the other thing is, as I mentioned, we offer that from like a subscription kind of based model, or advertisers that want to invest in the program after testing. When they see the long-term value, they can invest and get that creative supplied to them with no additional cost, and all of their dollars go into media. Outside of that, we've had some great releases recently with like Mountain Match where we can go deeper. So if you have any other questions, I'll be hanging around after. I'm happy to keep going and answer. But I appreciate you all today, and hope you have a great rest of your weeks here at Brand Week.
Thanks, everyone.